What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo NBA Strategy Show. Dave Loughran, Greg Ehrenberg with you on a 5-game slate here. Chop the top off of this one. Nothing for the early games at 12 p.m. and a 1:30 start. No, sir. And, well, I'm grateful for that because we already have an incredible amount of uncertainty surrounding this entire slate. That's been the case most of the week. We've got 2 days left of NBA basketball in the restart seeding games. Then we head to the playoffs. Happy to have everyone with us as always, and happy to be here. Kind of. It's a weird one, Greg, and it's going to take a lot of deciphering to try and figure out what we're doing with today's 5-gamer.
Yeah, and the minutes at this point in the season have just become so difficult to predict. Like we saw yesterday, all kinds of weird things going on in minutes. Like Embiid played through his ankle injury, then left with a hand injury, but who knows how many minutes he was going to play anyway. Horford played 18 minutes in the first half, didn't play in the second half. So it's so tough to predict minutes at this point in the season. So for sure, building lineups, I'm trying to focus on the guys who have something to play for, the Damian Lillards, the Devin Bookers, but we got to roster some of the other guys too. So it's not always viable to only play the teams with something to play for.
Yeah. So, well, we don't have the same luxury of going super deep into shows and spending a million hours breaking everything down. Not that it's necessary, obviously, but I tend to get carried away sometimes. Well, we do have the NBA or MLB strategy show coming up directly after this. Josh, is it the same stream? Are we doing same stream?
For live before lock, probably. For strategy show, no.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. That'll be coming up at 11 a.m. That's Josh Engelman and Adam Scher. And then we've got NBA Live Before Lock at 3 p.m., I believe. All right, so let's dive right into it. Greg, hit that thumbs up, by the way, if you're just walking in the door. It helps us immensely. Subscribe, hit the notification bell as well so you always know when new content's going to drop next. You'll get alerted if you want to. Makes life a little bit easier on you. Especially given the crazy start times for everything. Recently, Milwaukee, Minnesota, or Memphis. Doing baseball and doing basketball. I'm just, I'm my mind's in a pretzel. Anyway, this game right now, you have the Milwaukee Bucks as 1-point favorites. At least it opened that way. We don't have totals on a bunch of games. I'm refreshing, and now we do. Okay, now we're at Memphis minus 2.5. So only 30 minutes ago or 20 minutes ago, Milwaukee was -1. Memphis minus 2.5. 226 total here. Giannis got suspended for the remaining seeding games, which mean nothing. But, there we are. We can start with Milwaukee first. You've got, in terms of injuries and pending statuses, there's not a ton here. There's Giannis out, Wes Matthews is out, but then Ersan Ilyasova is questionable, which could actually loom kind of large. DJ Wilson started the second half of last game when Giannis got ejected, played 13 minutes, and closed the game out, which is not particularly good considering the entire starting lineup was on the bench. Ersan Ilyasova played 10 minutes in that second half, so that could definitely make a difference if Ilyasova sits.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this team, and I'm just trying to figure out, how many minutes are these guys willing to play the guys that are existing, and why? So we've got Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe. It looks like they're expected to play right now. I don't totally buy it, though, because, if you look at, what the Bucks did the last game of last season, Bonzi Colson played 44 minutes. They went with just bench guys and just played them the entire game. So even though Middleton and Bledsoe, it looks like they're going to play, I think there's a chance they get ruled out late. And then even if they play, I don't think we could play them in DFS, even with Giannis out, just because this feels like a spot to me they play 15 minutes and then go to the bench, which kind of kills the value for everybody on this team if that's the case, because then even the bench guys, as they come in, how much are they playing? Are they playing the starters play the first half, bench guys play the second half? I just think there's better spots to target than the Bucks, especially because the Grizzlies are motivated to win.
Okay. I think if there's one spot that I do like here, it would be DJ Wilson. For a couple of reasons. The first one, quite simply, being the run he got in the second half, and he played through a blowout. There was no reason left to play. Corver, Hill, Connaughton, Ilyasova, or Giannis was already out, but Brook Lopez, all of those guys played just a couple minutes into the fourth quarter. They came out, and then Giannis, sorry, I can't even pronounce that guy's name, Thanasis. Giannis Antetokounmpo's unknown brother. How about that? Frank Mason had a big game, played 21 minutes. Robin Lopez, Sterling Brown, Ilyasova, and DJ Wilson. But Wilson was the only one who started the second half that closed this game out, played 4.5 minutes to close the game out. He played 23 minutes in that game, too. So I think you could see around 27, 28 minutes from Wilson. The center position is quite simply one of those spots where if you're just out there, oftentimes you're going to accumulate some numbers just from being around the basket, being able to put back shots, block a couple shots, and pull in rebounds. So against Memphis, I have a lot of respect for Jonas Valanciunas, but I still think Wilson at minimum salary would be one of the guys I'm looking at today, specifically if Ilyasova sits. If Ilyasova sits, I think it definitely changes things up. But it's weird, Greg, because this is a completely meaningless game for Memphis. I'm sorry, for Milwaukee. And I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, to see Middleton sit and to see Bledsoe sit. That's still unknown. But for Memphis, this is a huge game. It's so big to the point where last game, John Morant played 42.5 minutes, and had that game not gotten out of hand in a blowout loss to Boston, he would have played 45 minutes. He would have played 35 straight minutes to close the game. So what we're seeing now is there's no doubt they're going to look to do everything they can to win this game. And they're one of the teams that we do have a good idea of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, so here's the deal with Morant, though. He's really expensive. And I don't necessarily think that he's a terrible play at his price tag. He's 9,000 on DraftKings. The thing is, the opportunity cost of rostering him means you can't roster Devin Booker, means maybe not being able to roster Damian Lillard. And those are guys who I prefer to pay up for. So I wouldn't say that Morant is somebody who wouldn't be in my player pool. There's just other guys I prefer to pay up for, and it makes Morant more of a secondary play. The other guy who I actually prefer more is Valanciunas. It's 7,700. So even though Valanciunas hasn't really played great in the bubble, he's only scored over 40 DK points once in all of these games. This is the really type of high leverage spot where I think they're going to try to give him as many minutes as possible. And like you said, if you like DJ Wilson in this game, you think he plays most of the center minutes, then I kind of think you have to like Jonas Valanciunas, because I think he would destroy DJ Wilson in the post.
He should, yeah. It's just a matter of whether or not. Look, here's the thing, though. John Morant, if you're looking across sites, John Morant's $7,700 on FanDuel. I think that's an outrageously cheap price point on a guy that might play 48 minutes. I'm telling you right now, if John Morant might play 45 minutes in this game if it's competitive against the Milwaukee team that Mike Budenholzer has no problem running and gunning. They're playing one of the fastest paces in the league they have all season long. To me, that is way too cheap. And I just, I can't help but look at someone in Morant and say, well, okay, has he been amazing in his rookie season? Well, from a fantasy standpoint, no, he's been pretty spotty. He's rookie of the year, but ultimately he's been pretty good in this restart. And he's a ball handling point guard who initiates the offense, brings the ball up the court, is their leading facilitator and their leading shot taker. 7,700 is super, super cheap. And then over on SuperDraft, the sponsor of the show, you're going to get John Morant at a pretty reasonable. Or I'm sorry, yeah, where is he? Hold on, I just lost him. John Morant's multiplier on SuperDraft is 1.45. So
that's a good number.
Yeah. So on DraftKings, I don't disagree with you. On FanDuel and SuperDraft, I think these are spots that if I can get, especially on a day like today where there's so much uncertainty, if I can pretty much lock in Taylor Jenkins giving this guy 40-plus minutes against a B squad or D squad Milwaukee team, I'm all about it. What else are your thoughts on this game from Memphis or Milwaukee? I don't mind jumping around a little bit because there's so much going on.
Yeah, so one other thing on Milwaukee, and just on your point of DJ Wilson, I'm a little wary of locking in cheap guys from the early games, just because I think if we look at these later games, here's the exception. If we find out DJ Wilson's starting, that's a totally different situation.
Well, that's the whole point. If he's not starting, I'm not there. But given that he started my point is he started the second half of last game, and Ersan Ilyasova might be out. So they might just be funneled into that spot by default.
Yeah, for sure. And if they start cheap guys, then I'm all for it. But in terms of cheap guys that are coming off the bench in the early games, even if they look to be decent value at that point in time, I think as we get later into the day, there's just inevitably going to be so many cheap starters that are going to make for really strong value plays that I'm a little wary of just rostering kind of fringe type values in early games who aren't starting, just because I'm pretty confident that better values are going to open up later in the day, and I don't want to use roster spots that I could swap out of for really strong value later in the slate.
That's fair. How much is going to open up, though? We have the New Orleans news. Orlando, we have a pretty good idea of who we're going to get there, and their value plays, generally speaking, are all over the place. Portland, we know what we're getting there. Brooklyn, I know Chio's is questionable. We can get into that. It's a later game. Utah's already sat the players that are going to sit, and Donovan Mitchell's probable to play. So is everybody else outside of Conley and Gobert. We know Phoenix is going to run their guys out. I think the biggest uncertainty, the biggest question mark for me right now is Dallas, and that starts at the same time as this Milwaukee-Memphis game.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about that, or just the general overlay of which
just
games matter?
General overlay, because like I said, I don't mind jumping around a little bit.
So for the Spurs game, there's potential for the Spurs to rest everybody, because if the Grizzlies and the Suns both win their game, which that game happens before the Spurs game, the Spurs are eliminated. And at that point, like DeMar DeRozan, somebody who, as of now, I would say if the game matters, DeMar DeRozan plays 40 plus minutes for the Spurs. But if the Grizzlies and Suns both win early, DeRozan could get rested because the game becomes meaningless for the Spurs. So that's one of the biggest pivot spots where I don't know, are the starters going to play or are they going to rest everybody? Like Derek White's been banged up. Dejante Murray had the ACL injury last year. So it's very viable that if the Spurs are eliminated from the playoffs by the time that they are supposed to take the floor, they just go, hey, we're going all backups this game. We're not taking any chances.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I also think, though, that you need to make some assumptions here. And my assumption is one of Memphis or Phoenix wins this game. I'm pretty confident that both of these teams don't lose. I think one of them is going to win. They're both playing teams that have absolutely nothing to play for. So,
but do they need one of them to win or both of them to win to get eliminated? I thought they were still alive if only one of them lose.
The Spurs are 32 and 38, 33, 39.
But if the Blazers lose, can't they pass to the Blazers?
No, they can't pass the Blazers. I guess. Yeah, I guess so. But here's what I'm saying though. Blazers are not losing to Brooklyn. Now, what you're saying is the Blazers play after them, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. They're going to have to play anyway. Right. So Phoenix, Phoenix right now is tied in win percentage. Yeah, pull that up. Tied in win percentage with San Antonio. So is Memphis. But it appears to me that right now they're above them in the standings. So there must be some tiebreaker there, which means in the event that one of these teams win, they would hold the tiebreaker. And then Portland would have to lose. But in order for that to happen, that's an insane scenario. So I guess maybe you're right. I guess you're right. Yeah. Memphis and Phoenix both have to lose. I don't know. Do you have it pulled up?
Yeah, so here they get the 9 seed if they win and 2 of the Blazers, Grizzlies, and Suns lose. So that means basically if the Grizzlies and Suns, if they win and 2 of the, so yeah, as long as
they're still in it, if only one of Memphis and Phoenix wins. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if both of them win, then the game means nothing for the Spurs.
Okay. So then I guess the question here next would be, is that value worth waiting around for? San Antonio Spurs value against the Utah Jazz in a sluggishly slow game?
Well, do we even know it's going to be that sluggishly slow just because Rudy Gobert isn't playing? It's the Jazz backup, so it's an easy matchup. It's not the matchup we're usually used to seeing against the Jazz. So to me, it would be, because then we get in a spot where, who's going to start? Like Drew Eubanks, maybe Keldon Johnson. He's kind of been okay. Like there's going to be cheap guys that start for the Spurs in that situation, what we could consider to be a decent matchup against the Jazz resting their starters. So for that reason, I want to leave some roster spots open in the case that they become viable value plays.
Sure. Look, I don't think we're on different pages. My point is I'm not going to completely forego early value if I think it's good because other value might open up. That's all I'm saying. Bird in the hand at times is better in a situation like that. If I think if DJ Wilson starts, I don't know what kind of minutes he's going to get, but I don't know what kind of minutes any of these guys are going to get. And if you think you do, not you personally, but if you think you do, you're full of shit.
I promise I don't know.
What'd you say?
I promise I don't know what the minutes
Yeah,
are.
yeah. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying anybody. Like we're just taking educated guesses. And I think in the event that Ilyasova sits and Giannis is already out, which we know, and Wilson starts, I'd be willing to say, all right, I'm fine doing that, and not going with Drew Eubanks if that's what it takes. So we'll see.
Yeah,
Though.
I agree with that. Anybody who starts for the Bucks at cheap prices, for sure, a core player would be a core player in my player pool.
Yeah, and don't go. I'm not saying go 100%. Just I don't want to miss out entirely on some good early performances because I'm waiting on some potential late ones. But it is something to keep in mind for sure. Wrap up this Memphis and Milwaukee game right now, where it stands. Who would your top plays be? And keep in mind, we will have NBA Live before lock. So fortunately, we'll have news on Porzingis and Doncic and everyone from Milwaukee.
Yeah. So for me, any cheap players that start from Milwaukee, that would be a priority play. Then from the Memphis side of the game, like you said, Ja Morant on FanDuel, DraftKings secondary play for me at his price tag. And then I like Valanciunas too, just because I think that he is a chance for huge upside, just because he's such a good per minute producer, potentially playing against backups.
Okay. Yeah, someone said Morant on DraftKings. Good luck with that 27 fantasy points. Listen, I don't think Greg and I disagree at 9,000. That's a lot of money, but he's going to, unless this game is entirely out of control, he's playing 40 plus minutes. Like there's absolutely no way he doesn't. I don't know, Greg. I can't think of a scenario outside of a 50-point game or, a little hyperbole there, but I can't think of a scenario outside of a monster blowout on either side that Ja Morant doesn't play huge minutes nearly the entire game.
I agree with you. And the other thing to consider too is if there's going to be a lot of value on this slate, we don't necessarily need 60 fantasy points from Ja Morant or even 50 at the price tag that he currently is. Like that's what you need normally at his price tag earlier in the season. But if there's going to be, a dozen min price players starting that score 30 fantasy points, you need to spend your salary somewhere. So if there are all those value plays that go off today and Morant just scores 35, 40 fantasy points, which kind of feels like a floor for him, then he could end up in the optimal lineup just because you have to spend your money somewhere.
For sure. And consider this too. There's a good chance Doncic doesn't play or is going to be severely limited. Then you've got Lillard. Giannis is out. Then you have Devin Booker. Yusuf Nurkic, Nikola Vucevic, who played very limited minutes last time out. There's no reason to anticipate him playing more minutes today. And then Ja Morant. Then you get down to Holiday out, Porzingis questionable, Ingram out, Middleton, who knows? Like those are your guys in the 8K range. So even on DraftKings, if you have point guard, shooting guard, you have guard, forward, utility, you can still make that work with value quite easily. Like I'm almost certain it'd be very easy to make a Lillard, Booker, Morant lineup if you really wanted to, right? I don't see how that would be that difficult at all. So again, I haven't made them, but we're going to have so much value that you're going full out stars and scrubs.
Oh, for sure.
All right, Phoenix and Dallas. Let's get to this one then. What is the line? It just came out. You got Phoenix at -7. Okay. Well, that should tell us a lot right out of the gate, Greg. 234.5 total. Phoenix -7 here. They're looking to sweep the bubble. Wildly impressive here in this restart. I've enjoyed every second of it. And really your only injuries are Kelly Oubre once again is not expected to play. Everyone else is. Cameron Johnson, Baines are probable. And then Porzingis and Seth Curry are questionable for Dallas. But I think this is one where we really want to pay close attention to injury updates for Dallas, especially given this spread.
Yeah, for sure. So talking about the Dallas side first, I highly doubt that Porzingis plays. Like if we look at guys who've been listed questionable over the last few days with nothing to play for, they've been ruled out way more often than not. So I'm going to assume Porzingis doesn't play. So Luka, then we have to look at him, and I mean, we were talking about this before the show. I would like to think that just kind of is some sort of revenge type thing. They play Luka close to, decent minutes just to be able to knock the Suns out of the playoffs because they passed on Luka in the draft. But I don't think we think that's a super likely scenario. There's better guys to pay up for than Luka. I prefer Morant. I prefer Lillard. I prefer Booker just because we know they have something to play for. So even with Porzingis likely sitting, it's tough to justify Doncic because it just seems so unlikely that he plays full minutes and the other guys are just so much safer on the high end because those guys are all vying for a playoff spot.
Yeah, he's locked into the 7. Could Doncic play 23 minutes and have 55 fantasy points? Yeah, he absolutely could. And he's done it many times, right?
He's done it against the Suns.
Yeah, right. Against Milwaukee, played 42. He averaged north of 2 fantasy points per minute. He averaged around 2 fantasy points per minute against Sacramento. So yes, he can certainly do it. I don't know. You can't bubble wrap these guys, Greg. I totally understand that. But if you're Rick Carlisle, you know you have a daunting task ahead of you against the LA Clippers. Hell, that game yesterday, I tweeted this. The Clippers-Nuggets game looked like it was a playoff game in the third quarter. And then the Clippers absolutely pulled away from them. It was the distinction was huge between which one of these teams in crunch time, and it's only one game. And obviously, Jokic didn't come back out for the fourth. Very good Clippers team. If I'm Carlisle, I'm trying to get myself prepared for this one. And I guess the only question is, do any of these coaches, the answer's got to be no. Like, do any of these coaches care if they throw a game to let another team into the playoffs? Because they shouldn't.
No, there's no like Bill Belichick of the NBA. There's no equivalent to that where there's a coach who that badly wants to beat somebody to do this or that. I'm trying to think.
Well, I was thinking, like, does Rick Carlisle think, shit, man, I don't want the Lakers playing the Phoenix Suns. I want the Lakers playing the Portland Trailblazers. Luka, go play 40.
I think the Clippers did that the other day against the Blazers, when they played Terrence Mann. Yeah, when they played Terrence Mann in the final 10 minutes of the game after he played a total of 40 seconds the two previous games.
And still won.
That absolutely happened that game.
For sure. And Doc said, I didn't even know about the standings. Okay.
Yeah, we just coincidentally never play Terrence Mann. It's like Terrence Mann gets all the quarterback. And just the Clippers pull the game to 1, and then they're like, all right, Paul George is coming up. Yeah, coincidence.
Exactly.
I don't buy that at all.
I was waiting for Doc to throw that game so he could face Utah. Yes, the last night's game to face Utah instead of Dallas. I'd much rather face Utah, but then again, when you're reseeded, it doesn't exactly help. So if we're talking about Dallas here, and if you guys have questions in chat, we'll try to get to them, but we'll get to them all in live before lock at 3 p.m. If our assumption right now is Porzingis doesn't play and we don't know what's going on with Doncic, there's not a whole lot that we can decipher right now.
No, Trey Burke at 4,400, he could be okay. He's played really well in the bubble, and he's always been a pretty decent per minute fantasy producer when he gets on the floor. I mean, if you look at his last 4 games, he scored over 20 DK points in all of them. Started last game, 12 points, 4 rebounds, 9 assists. But still, he's a fringe option. There's probably going to be better value plays than him. In order for me to want to roster Trey Burke, he's going to have to start, although I do think there's a somewhat decent chance that ends up being the case.
All right. Are you currently on anybody from the Dallas Mavericks?
It would only be Kleber potentially if he starts, or Trey Burke if he starts.
Okay. What if Luka and Porzingis sit? Would you be willing to look at Hardaway, or is that still too high of a price point? Because I don't think price really matters much today, but
Here's the thing. If those guys both sit, then I kind of start to think, what are the odds of Hardaway playing his regular minutes? I mean, I know that the last couple of games he played 36 and 34 minutes.
He probably plays 25.
But he's still, he's still one of the starters. He's still one of their core guys. So if they're resting Porzingis and Doncic, my assumption is going to be Hardaway either sits or he plays nowhere near his regular minutes.
Give me 30 Barea minutes. That would break the slate.
I would. Barea, it's funny. Barea is like 40 years old. He's tore his Achilles. You put him on the court, he scores fantasy points.
Yeah, dude, he's still a +1 per minute guy, like every single year. It's incredible. He's so fun to watch because he can create his own shot and he's a good playmaker. That's what you want at the position. Dude, if JJ Barea starts, you at 25, not even kidding, 25 minutes from JJ Barea against the Suns, you're probably getting what you need 80% of the time. So
yeah, you would expect over 30 fantasy points in that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And he'll produce. He will come through. JJ Barea won't let you down. But we still are it's still a lot of uncertainty there. He did play 26 minutes last game and scored 32.5 DraftKings points. Trey Burke last time out played 31 minutes, had 34. There's no doubt Barea is a better per minute guy, but Burke feels like one of those players that probably gets a little additional run because he's not decrepit. What about Phoenix on the other side? Devin Booker, dude, he's scored 30 plus points in like 5 of 7 games. He scored 30. I think he scored 35 in 3 straight. He has. This is actually interesting. He scored 35 points exactly in 3 straight and 4 of his last 5. He seems to really enjoy that number. And he scored 30 plus in 5 of his last 6. So you're going to get pretty prolific scoring from Devin Booker. Assuming this game is competitive, unlike the OKC game, you're probably going to get around 40 minutes from him. Now, I don't know if this game will be competitive at all. What I do know is that you still need to be looking at Devin Booker very, very closely.
I mean, their last game against the Sixers wasn't all that competitive down the stretch, and he still played 41 minutes. So I think they're not going to take any chances here. I think that if they're up, they're going to leave Booker in as long as possible because this is the Suns. We've seen them do crazy things. They are taking no chances blowing a lead here. So Booker, I feel really confident in him. In terms of the superstars on this slate, I go Lillard 1 with something to play for. I go Lillard 1, Booker 2, Morant 3. So I like Devin Booker a decent amount. Somebody else who I think could go overlooked is DeAndre Ayton because his last 2 games have been total garbage. And the one against the Thunder, that comes with an asterisk because he missed the entire first quarter because he skipped his COVID test and then checks in the second quarter. The game ends up being a blowout. He doesn't play in the fourth quarter, so only gets 17 minutes. That's kind of an excusable dud. And then the game against the Sixers, he just kind of sucked. Scores 26 fantasy points, 8 rebounds, 8 points, 12 rebounds. But still, DeAndre Ayton for the season has been a really good per-minute fantasy producer. I think that he could go a little bit overlooked because of those last couple of bad games, but he's still somebody with a massive amount of upside and could potentially be playing against, backups on the Mavericks. And if this is a game where, like, Boban plays center, like, Ayton's going to run circles around Boban. So I think that he's somebody with a lot of upside that's going to go a little bit overlooked in tournaments.
Okay. Any peripheral guys for Phoenix that stand out to you?
So here's the issue with the Phoenix peripheral guys. I think that the playing time and the minutes and the usage are going to be so focused on Ayton and Booker that it's hard for me to imagine many big games coming from other guys. Like on FanDuel, where we need to fill other positions, like Bridges and Cameron Johnson, those guys are fine at small forward on FanDuel. But there's nobody else I'm dying to play just because I think that the production is going to be so focused on a couple of guys.
Okay. And I see some conversations about Boban in chat. Just keep in mind that Boban Marjanovic, even in his best of days under Rick Carlisle, minutes usually pretty limited. But he did. This surprised me. Boban played 25 minutes. Hold on. 25 minutes against Utah last time out. That was pretty shocking. And then right before the last game, before the postponement of the season, he played 31 minutes. Boban's been on a bunch of teams, many of which were never willing to give him more than like 17 minutes. Most of that, people think because he's big, he's good defensively. He's not. He's just not exactly a star athlete.
No, he's got feet made of cement.
Exactly. Couldn't jump over a dime. Worse than Greg Monroe. But if he's out there and he's just catching balls and dropping them into the basket, which is literally what he does. You've watched him play a million times, right? Like he just stands there and drops balls into the basket. It's a spectacle for sure. If he starts, maybe Boban does get 25 minutes, and 25 minutes from Boban is just pure electricity, baby. So
for sure. And the other thing too, if we're going a little bit of maybe greasy theory towards the end of the season, if the Mavericks aren't playing for anything, right? They don't really care if they win or lose. How do you make the game more entertaining if you're Rick Carlisle? Yeah, you put Marjanovic in there for 25 minutes. He's a fan favorite. Like, why not? Everybody likes Boban. The players all like him. Opponents like him. The fans like him. So I mean, he's in movies now. He's a movie star just because he's really tall. Actually, that's really the only reason people like him. But
he's
still,
awesome. That's not true. He's got I'm not kidding, Greg. He's got one of the greatest personalities and is widely referred to around the league as one of the nicest people in the NBA. So he's like the gentle giant.
Yeah, but I also think that kind of backs him into playing time because when there's nothing to play for, I kind of think there's this spot where they go like, hey, let's just play Boban because he can put up some big numbers in limited minutes, and just the fact that he is the fan favorite. Like I wrote this about him in their last game, where it's like, hey, if they're going to rest guys, why wouldn't they just give Boban a bunch of minutes? The game doesn't matter anyway. At least make it fun.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Plus, Dwight Powell didn't enter the bubble. Willie Cauley-Stein didn't enter the bubble. So if Porzingis sits, you're already shorthanded there. Dorian Finney-Smith, I know he's probable to play, but who knows what his playing time looks like. Maxi's probable too. But all in all, there could be some minutes there for Boban, and I'm pretty excited about it. So that's a 4 p.m. Eastern time lock or tip-off, so keep that in mind. That's important, and it should be pretty helpful to us going forward. All right, 2 down, 3 to go. Before we do that, just want to shout out our sponsor, SuperDraft. I mentioned Ja Morant earlier in the show at 1.45 multiplier. Some of you might be scratching your head asking, what in the hell does that mean? Well, I'll tell you. It's very simple. Instead of salaries, they do multipliers at SuperDraft, and it is a very cool format. I've said a lot. I hate when sites try and reinvent the wheel for DFS because there's a product that works and everyone loves it. This is the one instance where I've looked at it and I said, you know what? This is actually really cool because it's none of this craziness. It just makes sense where you can play whoever you want, but it doesn't mean that by playing all of the top players, the top priced players on a FanDuel or DraftKings, doesn't mean that makes sense because in most cases it doesn't. If you're getting a 2x multiplier on a Boban Marjanovic and he starts, or a DJ Wilson, and they drop 40 fantasy points, you're getting 80 fantasy points from them. So while Damian Lillard or Luka have a 1x multiplier and they score 60, you're still only getting 60. So it's a really cool strategic way to build lineups. And flat out, there's attainable wins. Like you could go in, $12 entry, $5 entry, and actually have a really decent shot at winning, a couple $1,000, in some cases $4,000 or $5,000. And then when they do the bigger ones, even more. So yeah, it's not $100,000 every single night for 3 different contests, but it's really a spot where you can become familiar with it, gain an edge in playing SuperDraft, and win some real money. And the best part is they'll inject money straight into your account, free Supercash, just by signing up through us. Awesemo10 is the promo code. Use that at sign up. AWESEMO 10, all one word. You get $10 straight in your account upon depositing $10. You have a little bit more money. You want $20 straight into your account. Use the promo code Awesemo10. Deposit $100 or more. You get $20 straight in there. That's SuperDraft. Go to superdraft.io or download it in the App Store. Check it out today and get that free money. Get those contests in and go win some of it. All right, Greg, let's go to Utah and San Antonio. We already kind of talked about this a little bit, kind of primed it a minute ago. Right now, the San Antonio Spurs are 8-point favorites. If here's an interesting kind of point here. If you believe from a betting standpoint, if you really have confidence that Memphis and Phoenix are going to win, you should be hammering the Jazz and taking 8 points there.
Well, here's the other thing too, because the books aren't that quick to adjust. I wouldn't bet it this early in the day, but if we get to halftime of those early games, like the line isn't going to move from that 8 points. So if we get to halftime and those games look like blowouts, we know what the results are going to be. Then we could go jump on the Jazz then. Like there's going to be opportunities to potentially bet them during those early games where we don't really need to guess what the scores are going to be. So
there should be, yeah.
That's the approach I'm going to take.
Yeah, it's a good approach. And some sites honestly have cash out options. So if something happens and it swings wildly against you, maybe you lose a couple dollars, but you can still get out of a really bad bet. I don't see that being the case. But yeah, take your time. I've been saying this a lot lately. I said it on Sirius the other day, Greg. This is an ideal time to wait for injury news. Make sure you have notifications directly coming to your phone or whatever you're using, because when that happens, for example, the other day, the Phoenix Suns were facing OKC. OKC rolled 3 players out. The line was at 4.5. Boom. They didn't take it off for 3 or 4 minutes. They do. You get in there early. It comes back at minus 8.5. So you're going to see a lot of this stuff. I will say Vegas is probably pricing some of this in, like with that Dallas game. I feel pretty confident that they're pricing in at least Porzingis being out, probably more. But this is good times with a couple days left to just be real cognizant of what the injury news looks like and jump in a couple minutes before they wipe them off the book and reset them.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually the biggest betting win that I had so far this year was Nets plus 13 and plus 700 on the money line against the Clippers, where everybody was supposed to rest. And then all of a sudden they go, hey, everybody's probable now. And I tweeted about it at the time. I was like, hey, jump on the Nets now. And that ended up being, just a crush spot because, yeah, they were plus 13.5 and then plus 700 on the money line, and they crushed the Clippers.
Yeah, it's definitely a profitable way to go about things, especially if these. And trust me, there are a lot of books that are waiting even more than a couple minutes to pull them up. I try and do it right away. Just make sure you don't accidentally bet the wrong team because your fingers are, you're trying to rush to get bets in and something like that. You definitely want to be careful. But I digress. San Antonio, Utah Jazz. What are we looking at here for the San Antonio Spurs outside of the fact that they're going to be scoreboard watching in the 4:00 hour for sure?
Yeah, it's really tough just because, like I said before, we don't know whether this game matters for them or not. And if it does, DeMar DeRozan 8,100 on DraftKings, he's going to have to play a whole bunch of minutes. He's somebody who is, let's see, how many minutes have they been playing him recently? Only played 28 last game, but it was a blowout, 33 the game before. His minutes actually haven't been all that high, but I think he could push for 40 minutes in this game if this is a spot where they have to win to make the playoffs. So DeRozan is somebody who could either end up playing 40 minutes or not playing at all, depending on where they sit in the standings come at the start of this game. So just pay attention to that and who's starting for the Spurs. It's a situation where I just feel like we don't have enough information right now to really know for sure what's going to go on with them.
Man, even if DeRozan does play 40 minutes, like how much do I really like this guy? I'm honestly a little bit surprised with LaMarcus Aldridge sidelined for the entire bubble, for the entire restart, right? I'm pretty shocked as to DeRozan's usage and his overall production inside the bubble. I get that, this doesn't cater to DeRozan's style of play, the new style of basketball. We all could agree on that. But I'm still very much shocked that hasn't been the case. Like his usage is 25% in the bubble. Almost every time when you had a legitimate sample that DeRozan's been out, that Aldridge has been out, it's been 30+%. So I don't know. It's kind of strange to me. Really, he's been okay. 25% usage, 25% assist rate, rebound rate is 7.7%. But there's been nothing special about DeMar DeRozan in this restart. And I'll never try and predict, to say what his ceiling is. But he doesn't have a single 50 fantasy point game. And they've had some very easy matchups without Aldridge on the floor, without Bryn Forbes on the floor. And he hasn't really taken advantage of that.
So here would be my counter to that. They haven't played him nearly as many minutes as I think they can, or what I would expect from that either. And the usage is a little bit lower. But still, look at overall in the bubble. 38.68 DK fantasy point average in just 32 minutes per game. So now let's say that he's playing against the Jazz backups. And those 32 minutes go to 40 minutes. And that 38 DraftKings point average, that could become 45 to 50 just based on he's getting, if we put him at 40 minutes, which I think is probably somewhere around the ceiling, if this game really matters, that's 25% more minutes than he was playing before. And he had a 38 DK fantasy point average. So, that puts him 45 plus fantasy points. So in that situation, I'm still willing to roster him, especially considering how easy this matchup is going to be against Jazz backups.
Okay, what's to suggest, though, that he plays 40 minutes when every game they've played has been critical thus far?
The scores of some of these games have not really been like last game. They beat the brakes off the Rockets. They beat them by 18. Starters didn't play in the fourth quarter. Game against the Pelicans, they were up by double digits for most of the game. They haven't really played in close games in the bubble. They played in a couple. The one really close game they played was against the Kings. That was a 1-point game and he played 38 minutes. I think that a lot of these have just been circumstantial. They haven't played that many competitive games.
All right. I don't know, bro. I don't know. Philly was real close, 31 minutes.
Let's see.
Denver.
Yeah, that was a close game. Look, he's also gotten in foul trouble.
What, like once?
I think he had 3 first half fouls against the Jazz. He might have had 3 first half fouls against the Nuggets.
Look, you might be right. All I'm saying is that he's a 30% usage and 30% assist rate guy with Aldridge off the floor this year. Now we've got 7 straight games with Aldridge off the floor in the restart, and it just hasn't been there yet. So maybe Pop does say like, okay, we were saving this for game 8, but I don't know. This
So
we'll find out. Ultimately, DeRozan's just not 1.16 fantasy points per minute in the bubble. They're okay numbers. I'm personally just not champing at the bit to get there is all.
No, I'm not chomping at the bit to get to him either. And I prefer, if we're going on the list of guys, he would be fourth for me. He's behind Lillard. He's behind Booker. He's behind Morant. But I still think he's worth consideration. He's not somebody I would X out of the player pool. The other thing that I would say too is to your point. If I'm trying to analyze why is it the case that his usage rate is down? Why is it the case that his assist rate is down relative to what we've seen from Aldridge? I'm just trying to think about this information. You know what I think it is? I think it's because Murray and White are playing more together. Like, we haven't seen the three of them play together all that much this year. Now, instead of there being only 2 ball handlers on the court, there's 3 ball handlers on the court at the same time. So maybe there is something to what you're saying as to why it's been lower, because it definitely has. And if I'm trying to apply logic to it, I think that's probably the reason.
Okay. It's hard to say, especially with Popovich coach teams and, a mid-range guy in DeMar DeRozan. What about, and we'll move on after this, but what about Dejante Murray? He's another guy who, on a per minute basis, is a very talented player, +1 fantasy point per minute guy all season long. Matter of fact, through the first 2 weeks of the season, this guy was leading everyone in per minute production, not just on the team, but in the league. Again, I don't see him getting more than 32 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think they've been a little cautious with them all year just because of the ACL surgery he had last year. And I think that maybe he'll have a little bit more leash next season. So he's still somebody who has upside. He's had a couple decent games in the bubble, but I just think they've been so careful with his health long term that they haven't really been willing to push him. So I'm a little hesitant to say that he has the same potential to play like 38 to 40 minutes that DeRozan has. I don't really see that in Murray.
All right. What about on the other side of this game? Utah Jazz, they're without Rudy Gobert. We know that. We know they're without Mike Conley. That's it. And they're locked in. Sorry, and they're locked into the 6th seed, which is also pretty important.
Yeah, so this game doesn't mean anything for them. They played their starters last game, and they each played like 15 to 20 minutes. It was very limited playing time for the starters. They didn't play in the second half. And Emmanuel Mudiay is also listed as questionable for this game. So if we assume that, I don't even know. Would they sit? Like, do they care enough about Mudiay to sit him when he's listed as questionable?
Yeah. Honestly, do they care enough about him to play him if he's active?
That's true also.
I mean, and I'm serious about that. This was a big point of contention earlier in the season where I was look, I get a lot wrong. Don't get me wrong. I get plenty wrong. But I'm very adamant about knowing that Quinn Snyder is one of the more predictable guys in the league. And Mudiay was like 75% owned. I said, I'm going nowhere near this guy. He is not going to get the minutes. You're just going to see Donovan Mitchell get the run at the 1, Joe Ingles play the 2, and then they throw in Royce O'Neal, Bogdanovich, Gobert, and then do what you need to do. But in this case, Mike Conley is out. Mitchell can slide over, but Bogdanovich is also out. And Mudiay has been playing, 26, 27, 28 minutes in his last 2 games. So this to me is a different situation than it would have been earlier in the year. They do have Jordan Clarkson, which is interesting, but his minutes were very limited last time out. I don't know. Mudiay is just one of those guys to me that even if he does get the minutes, so much has to go right.
So here's what I'm struggling with. I'm looking at their depth chart now, and all right, so assuming that the starters are limited and assuming Mudiay doesn't play, I still have no clue who the hell is playing point guard minutes for them. Like, I look at the roster, it's like, who do I want to play? Who's the value play? And I honestly have no clue. Like, they're going to play Rajon Tucker a bunch of minutes? Are they going to play Mie Oni a bunch of minutes? Like, I don't know. I don't trust any of these guys. There's nobody, unless one of these guys ends up entering the starting lineup. There's nobody I really want to say I want to make a significant investment in any of these guys because we don't know anything about them. We don't know how much they're going to play either.
Can I interest you in Justin Wright Foreman?
Sure.
That's a real person, by the way.
I know.
That is a real person.
I know he's on the depth chart. I just don't know how much he's going to play or what he's going to do. He played 15 minutes last game. He was okay for fantasy. 7 points and 3 assists in 15 minutes. That's not terrible. If he plays 30 minutes, those would be decent numbers if we double those.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm not being serious about that.
But here's the thing. He could start a point guard.
So, yeah, exactly. He could. Clarkson, Gobert, Ingles, O'Neal, and Conley started last game, okay? In the second half, your starters were Niang, Oni, Moutier, Rajon Tucker, and Tony Bradley. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. It was Conley. Goddamn. Niang, no, the startup. The popcorn machine drives me nuts. Niang, Moutier, Tucker, and Ed Davis, and Oni did start. Yeah, okay. So go in popcorn machine and look at that second half rotation. It's an absolute travesty. There is nothing you can decipher from that whatsoever at all. There's nothing there. So, unless you think that wild type of rotation where this guy's subbing in for him and then he subs in for a point guard who subs in for a center who subs in for two small forwards and the coach, like it's going to be really tough. So I don't know, man. This is one of those games. This is probably for me the toughest game right now to figure out.
It's really tough. If I'd pick one value play from the Jazz that I feel decent about, it's Tony Bradley, just because he is a really good fantasy producer. I think there's a chance that he starts. If we got the game against the Spurs, where Gobert also missed that game, they're playing the Spurs again. Tony Bradley played 22 minutes, had 15 points and 11 rebounds. And he's made 2 starts this year. He had 11 points and 10 rebounds in both those starts, even though he picked up 5 fouls in both of them, played limited minutes. So
yep.
if Bradley's going to get decent minutes, he's a good value.
Value centers, man. It's the best position to pick up value. It really is. It's the easiest place to manufacture and fall face first into fantasy points. There's no doubt. Brooklyn, Portland. Big one for the Portland Trailblazers. Dame Lillard coming off a career-high tying 61 points. What a great night that was. I'm watching on one TV the Blazers, on the other one a 5 overtime game, the 4th longest hockey game in NHL history. It's good to have all of this stuff back, and it's always a pleasure watching Dame Lillard just absolutely annihilate opposing defenses. CJ McCollum, on the other hand, has been playing with a fractured back. Says he's okay. It's not going to bother him too much. He's looked okay. It's pretty much typical CJ McCollum production. It's a seesaw. It goes up and down. A lot of that contingent upon how Damian Lillard's going to play. But here you have it. The Portland Trailblazers, 8.5-point favorites. The total in this game coming in at 236.5, the highest on the slate. Hard to get away from Dame. I know there's people in chat right now, Greg, talking about how go to Nurkic as a pivot for leverage off of Dame, but that you're not. I don't really think that's going to create much leverage. I do know that Nurkic can take usage away from Dame a lot more than a Hassan Whiteside would, but I'm not really feeling that notion, knowing that this game is so important and that Dame's probably going to get up 25 plus field goal attempts once again.
Yeah, so I like Lillard a lot in this spot, especially for cash games. Like if you're still playing cash games at this point in the year, like if you're crazy enough to say that you're confident enough in the floor of lineups to be playing cash runs, so you have to have Lillard, because the most likely scenario is he plays 40 plus minutes and takes a million shots. And I also think I don't buy into McCollum's back not bothering him, because look at his usage. It is way down over the last few games. And I also think that's part of the reason that Lillard's taken so many shots and stepped up, is because he knows that McCollum's compromised. He knows that McCollum's not 100%. And so Lillard's putting more of the load on his shoulders, because McCollum the last few games, 16% usage rating, 19%, 17% usage rating in 3 of the last 4 games. So McCollum is not playing the same role that he has played in earlier parts of the season. And I think that we could attribute that to the back injury. And that is why Lillard's getting more usage. Also just because of the gravity of the situation. This team needs to win. Lillard's the star. He's going to take all the shots. So I don't care about the price tag. There's too much floor and too much ceiling for me to ignore Lillard.
Okay. The good thing about Terry Stotts is you know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to play these guys a ton of minutes. Like
Yeah,
there's,
for
sure. They control their own destiny. So it doesn't matter what happens in those other games. That's the beautiful thing about this. I think Lillard probably plays 41 minutes. McCollum plays another 39, 40 minutes. And there's no reason at this point not to believe that. Lillard's got a 36% usage rate over those aforementioned 4 games that you had just talked about. McCollum's below 20%. Nurkic is at 21%. There's not a single player other than that within or above 20%. So it gives you a pretty good idea of what you're dealing with. Carmelo Anthony at 19.6%. I can't get away from someone like Damian Lillard. And then you just look at his production in the bubble. It's not fluky. They need this from him.
It's ridiculous. It's the usage is so high. My only concern here is if you want to know how Dame fails, it's Portland's a 10-point favorite today. If they get up by like 25 points against the Nets, given his recent work rate, I think there's potential for him to sit out at the end of the fourth quarter. That's the only way he fails to me. So to me, the pivot isn't going to Nurkic. The pivot is just rostering like Morant and Booker and DeRozan or something like that. Like I don't think there's a direct pivot because I think the most likely scenario for Dame failing is not playing fourth quarter minutes, which should also affect the other starters on the Blazers.
Sure. I don't disagree there. I will say this much though. Like, given that we're going to have so much minimum salary, 3K value, I don't know if I'd even want to pivot to DeRozan off of Lillard, because if DeRozan goes for 45 or 50, Lillard can have a game where he doesn't play the fourth quarter and still goes for 45 or 50, and the salary doesn't matter as much, but the upside is still there. So I guess that's a give and take situation for sure. Do you consider playing some Brooklyn Nets players if you're saying you might have some concern that this game gets out of hand and Dame doesn't get his full allotment of minutes? If that's the case, do you want somebody from the Brooklyn Nets? Because if this game stays close, they're going to be in there for their full minutes.
So I think that per dollar, the best value here is Joe Harris, just because he's played really well in the bubble. He hasn't been priced up for the performance. His usage is up. He's playing more minutes than he played earlier in the season. So I think that he is decent. The only question I have here is, like, why are the Nets playing guys regular minutes? What's the motivation? Is it just to play spoiler? And the other thing too is, I mean, if I'm looking at the other side, the Nets have been a very tough team to predict in the bubble. So maybe there is a chance that they play guys regular minutes. So I think that if I'm rostering Nets guys, I would just make a full game stack. But I'm not like too keen to play one-offs on the Nets just because I'm not confident in a bunch of guys playing and all of them playing regular minutes.
Justin, here are the players that got 30 plus minutes last game against Orlando, and the guys that played 30 plus minutes were Zanan Musa played 35 minutes, which is pretty remarkable. Came off the bench. And then Justin Anderson played 31 minutes. Dante Hall, who's questionable, so is Chioza, played 30 and a half or almost 31 minutes. So, yeah, I don't know. Kurucs did not play in the fourth quarter. Was he in foul trouble by any chance? 1, 2. No, he wasn't. He just didn't play. So
they're really tough to predict. This is a tough team to nail down the rotation. If just gun to your head, I don't know why somebody do this, but put a gun to your head and say how many minutes or who's going to be secure from the minutes. The starters, do they
How
play?
dare you put a metaphorical gun to my head? You know what movie that's from?
I don't.
No? You ever seen Couples Retreat? Vince Vaughn?
No.
John Favreau? Oh, great movie. Go ahead.
So Nets players, most likely scenario. Rest, full minutes, or partial minutes, do you think? It's probably partial minutes to me.
Well, I don't think there's any way they rest them, only because we have pretty good indicators that they're like. And by the way, when we're talking about rest, who we're talking about, like their stars, Karis LeVert and Jared Allen, right? They've been confirmed in from what I've seen. So
okay.
Same with Joe Harris. So I'd say limited minutes, but I'd give someone like LeVert 25, 26. Same with Jared Allen. I think they'll fall in around that range. Maybe they don't play the fourth quarter or something. But yeah, it's a little bit difficult. I'm with you. There's not a ton there. But you got to ask the question, because if we're worried about, I'm not worried about the blowout with Dame, honestly. Like if they blow this team out, he's probably going to have a hand in it. So yeah, I'll bite the bullet on that one to follow up on your gun to my head reference.
Sorry to do that to you.
Let's close this out. Hey, if you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up. Helps us a ton. If you just joined a little while ago, welcome. Stick around after the show. MLB Strategy Show is coming up next. And if you haven't checked out Awesemo.com yet, we'd love to have you over there. We'd love to have you hop into our premium Slack chat when you sign up at Awesemo.com/join. And really just take a look around. Even if you're not ready, at Awesemo.com/join, we've got, you scroll to the bottom. Not a lot of people know this. You scroll to the bottom, you can see tutorial videos on all of our best, most popular tools, the tools that help people win real money. And you can see exactly what they do, why people like them, what they're used for. You could see testimonials to people that are members and subscribers that have been with our site for a while. But more than anything, you're getting tools that are developed and used by Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, the number 1 ranked DFS player in the world. He just took down another monster tournament last night. It's absurd. It's not just slapping his name on it. Like, these are his tools. He uses these tools to win money. And I think that's why a lot of people are with us. Not only that, though, we have great content from other people. We have great premium articles. We have the lineup builder. We have a good bunch of analysts who put, every day into putting in the work so that they can provide you guys with the right moves, the right plays, the right decisions to make, as a complementary piece to all of our projections and ownership and top stack tools and everything else. So, if you're looking to change your game up, go to awesemo.com/join and check out everything we have, from the weekly pass to the express weekly for $3.95 a week. I say it all the time. I would highly recommend the monthly. I think the all access monthly is perfect, because even if you don't think you want to play NFL or you want to play MLB and only don't want to play NBA or PGA or NASCAR or UFC or NHL or esports, we've got everything. If these sites have contests for them, we've got content, premium, projections, ownership, everything for everything at awesemo.com/join. Be sure to join that premium Slack chat when you do. People talking DFS and sports and, making friends all day long. All right, Greg, let's close this out. Orlando and New Orleans, or New Orleans, as many would say. Drew Holiday, out. Brandon Ingram, out. Zion Williamson, out. Orlando, last I looked, 4.5-point favorites in this one. Now it's down to 3, as a matter of fact. That's interesting. On the other side, Evan Fournier out, and Aaron Gordon, Michael Carter-Williams, Terrence Williams out. What a shit game to try and figure out. So I'll set the table with this, let you take over, and we'll close this out, turn it over to the MLB crew. Last game with – sorry, now I'm setting the table. Last game without these 3 guys for New Orleans. Alvin Gentry started, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, who's questionable, Etuan Moore, Nicola Melli, and Jackson Hayes. And not a single player on this team cracked the 30-minute mark. That sucks.
All right. Well, first of all, very important game for me, because my biggest offseason bet of the season was New Orleans under 39.5 wins. So if they lose today, I win the bet. If they win, it's going to be a push, because there's not going to be enough games. So important game for me for all kinds of dumb reasons. But the other thing, in terms of rotation, I like value on the New Orleans side of the game. But I understand that the minutes were wonky last game. With Josh Hart questionable, I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a really good GPP play, because when he's on the floor, you know what he does? He shoots. He's a 25.5% usage rating this year. Doesn't matter, he doesn't make shots. We saw this in the opening game of the season when he was somewhat of a popular play and the game still mattered. He could not make anything. He did not stop shooting. So he has a 35% field goal percentage this year, really high usage rating. I think there's a pretty good chance that he plays extended minutes today, because, why not? Look at this point in the season. When else are you going to play a guy you drafted in the first round? Other than the last game of the season, a bunch of guys are resting. He's a guy who profiles to have a really fantasy-friendly game when he's on the court. So I like him a decent amount. Jackson Hayes starting at center. What's the value in playing Jahlil Okafor as many minutes as he played last game? We know what Okafor is. I think that Jackson Hayes gets more of the center minutes today. So those are 2 guys that I like as value plays, Jackson Hayes and Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Okay. It's a tough one. It really is. But Jackson Hayes, yeah. The biggest thing for me, and I'll leave it at this, and I'll let you close out with Orlando, because we're up against it. Biggest thing for me is, if I'm considering players, there's a couple of things. Dirt cheap players, I want them to be someone that can produce in the event that they get very limited time. I want to know that, okay, this guy can give me more than a fantasy point per minute. I don't need 40 minutes from him. Second of all, this has been something you'll hear me preach all the time, and this is just facts. Unless it's a ball handling wing, and there aren't that many of them, specifically the value guys, very, very seldom will you see that when they're coming in and replacing a starter. Centers and point guards are the ones that are going to give you the best opportunity to get quality production in limited minutes if they don't get 30 plus. So, and you just mentioned Jackson Hayes, Alexander Walker. Those guys are either going to have ample shot blocking, rebounding, putback opportunities, or playmaking and pick and roll scoring opportunities. That's what I'm looking for. So maybe we're not going to be here when talking about crazy news that breaks, and now you're sitting there left by yourself figuring out who am I looking at. Well, just consider that guys that have the ball in their hands, guys that are going to have easy opportunities to score fantasy points, usually is the simplest decision to make. All right, Greg, you can follow up on that and then close out with Orlando, or just close out on Orlando. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so the other thing too, that just one more thing to add on, I also think that there's correlation.
Kristaps is doubtful now, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, I mean he's not playing. I think that's to be
go
expected.
Away. Or go ahead. I said go away. Go ahead.
Go away. All right, I'll leave.
We're going to go away in a second.
I also think there's correlation playing Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jackson Hayes together, because it stands to reason if one of them plays extended minutes, both of them are playing extended minutes, because they would be on the court for the same reasons. The Pelicans playing backups, trying to get the young guys extended minutes. So I think it makes a lot of sense to have them in the lineups together. As for the Orlando side of the game, I like Markelle Fultz. This is a game already. The Pelicans do not defend point guards well. Now it figures that this is going to be him playing against the backups there. Markelle Fultz, for all the issues that he's had, and you might have a little bit of bias against him as a Sixers fan, very good fantasy player. He's a guy who racks up.
This guy sucks, man. Don't give me that shit.
When he's on the court, he racks up counting stats. This is a favorable matchup for him. You look at him in the bubble last couple games, 30 DK points, 44 DK points. This is the spot where I think if you're the Magic, you try to extend Markelle Fultz and give him extra minutes. Last game was a blowout. 2 games ago against the Celtics, he played 33 minutes. I think that he has potential to play over 30 minutes in this game. He's reasonable. He's a good permanent fantasy producer when he's on the court. He's somebody who I don't think is going to have all that much ownership, and it makes a lot of sense here.
You're blinded by the hype, Greg. You're blinded by the hype.
The hype is way gone. The hype is way gone.
No, it's not. Go on Twitter anytime. If Markelle Fultz makes 3 shots in a row, it's like, oh man, I bet the Sixers are crying in their soup today. I'm telling you, bro, it is often and early and often. He's averaging what? Less than a fantasy point per minute. By the way, I think Markelle Fultz is a perfectly fine play today. His usage is up considerably over his last 2 starts. I just find it funny. Like, he hit a 3 from his own free throw line to end a half. And you're like, oh my God, Markelle Fultz knocking down 3-pointers like it's his job. No, he's not. He heaved one up and ended up getting lucky. But I don't disagree. The usage has been there. His price is affordable, and he'll be playing against a dirt cheap Orlando, or a backup squad for the New Orleans Pelicans. So I hear you on that. Anyway, thanks to you guys for hanging out. As always, we appreciate it. We'll be back around for the Live Before Lock show to answer your questions and break down all of the incoming news that we're going to get throughout the coming hours. Stick around. MLB Live strategy show coming up next. Before you head out, too, hit that thumbs up. Like I said, a massive help. It's the easiest way to help support us here at Awesemo, and we love you for it. See you back here soon.